So they're going to be very quiet when they set off in 5 seconds time as the red lights come on, and we await the start, and away we go. Bad start from the second row for Gregor McFadden. Everybody else managing to shuttle past him. He's desperately trying to get up to speed, get momentum, but the only time you can regain momentum is when you're coming out of the first braking zone. So in they go, and it's a pole position man that's leading down the hill. They go. Murray Scott ahead of Martin Nisbet, heading towards turn 3 at McIntyre's, and Murray Scott retains the lead through there. Aidan Wilson's up into 3rd position, and the 77 car of James McCracken up into 4th position from 6th on the grid.
Through the chicane, up the hill towards Clark Curve. Then just the rain, the little clouds and showers just swirling around here at Knockhill. It's a fully wet circuit. As a little bit of a moment on the entrance into Clark's there for Murray Scott. The rear just started to come around on him a little bit. He did hang on to it very, very well, but that's surely going to kill his momentum for Murray Scott there. He's got right behind him the 117 of Martin Nisbet, then the 24 of Aidan Wilson, 77 James McCracken's made a good start, and where is the 99 of Dan Martin? Where has he got to? He is back in 6th place. This is not a good start to the race for Dan Martin.
Yeah, it's 9 laps to go yet, so he can still make amends, but yes, he didn't want to be that far down. As the 77 car tries to battle its way back into the 4th position that was briefly lost at the hairpin there, but it's absolutely side by side between James McCracken and James Hitchin crossing the line there. There was, I think, about 100th of a second between them as they head down to Duffus once again.
Side by side for second as Aidan Wilson goes for it as they go through Leslie's and then towards McIntyre's. Aidan Wilson in the little blue number 24, he goes through, so he gets the move done on the 117 of Martin Nisbet, and while he made that move, Murray Scott is taking full advantage at the front of the field, and he is pulling away. He wants to win this championship from the front. He's got the slight edge in the championship points by 8 points over Dan Martin, but he is looking very, very good at the front of the field right now.
Somebody very, very sideways in 4th position and beautifully held. That was a tremendous piece of car control, and I think that was the 24 or the 27 of James Hitchin. Yes, it was James Hitchin. In fact, he was completely sideways, beyond sideways, and still managed to get it through to the apex of the corner.
So, side by side again as the 77 of James McCracken goes for a little move up the inside there for 4th place, but doesn't get it done and actually loses a lot of momentum, and Dan Martin goes by there. So Dan Martin is now actually up into 5th, right in behind the 27 of James Hitchin.
Yeah, that was an unfortunate move for the 77 car. James McCracken just didn't work, lost all his momentum, and there's no way to get back up to speed. So Dan Martin making hay out of that one, and so can Dan Martin start to move forward. His next target is going to be to try and separate James Hitchin from 4th position. So let's see if he can do that as they go down towards McIntyre's. Doesn't attempt it there, but he's still in a good position behind that number 27 car.
So Murray Scott looking strong early on with the fastest lap of the race last time by, but Aidan Wilson is on the charge now. He's got a bit of clean air ahead of him. He's set the personal best sector, in fact absolute best in sector 1. He took 2/10 out of Murray Scott just in sector 1 alone as they come up towards the timing point for sector 2. Let's see if that gap is continued as Murray Scott goes through. Then it's Aidan Wilson. Aidan Wilson actually gives away 4/10 of a second in the favour of Murray Scott there. So Murray Scott loses 2/10 in sector 1, then gets back 4 in sector 2. So they're different speeds in different parts of the circuit.
Gregor McFadden trying to make a bit of a comeback in the 18 car. He's made a place up at the hairpin there. If he can just about make it stick, he might lose it again. He's trying to pass Ross Dunn, and Ross Dunn has more momentum up the straight and is regaining the position, but as McFadden has the inside for the slight kink that's in the start line, he's gone back into the position again. So that's fighting over 7th and 8th at the moment.
So Murray Scott pulls it all together to get another best lap of the race, a 1:14.136. Aidan Wilson a 1:14.662. But Wilson is really, really strong in that first sector. He's 3/10 quicker than Murray Scott in that first sector there as they come up the hill towards Clark Curve. So the different parts of the circuit where each car is stronger, but what it means, though, is Murray Scott is leading by 2 seconds, and that's exactly where he needs to be to try and put a good gap between him and Dan Martin, who's languishing back in 5th. He's not had a good day as Dan Martin.
Yeah, Dan Martin he's got himself up to 5th, but just doesn't seem to be able to get the extra momentum required to close the gap to the 27 car of James Hitchin ahead of him, and he's still under pressure from the 77 of James McCracken behind him.
He's got James McCracken ahead of him. No, behind him, excuse me, yes, who just nearly had a lunge there into the hairpin. Shows you how important qualifying is in the Citroen C1s. If you don't get away in that, you don't get away with the leaders, you really are stuffed.
Yes, there's no way to make up extra time, really. It's the cars are totally equal, really, in performance. It's really just about the fine precision driving technique that's required to keep these things on the limit without going over the limit and losing momentum.
You mean there isn't a Michelin overnight special tyre?
Well, no, that's a point. I don't think there is. No.
I think it's Nankang tyre, isn't it?
I think it's Nankang's they're using, yes.
Yeah, Taiwan's finest. Murray Scott leads then by 2.115 of a second from Aidan Wilson, who has in turn broken away from Mark Nisbet.
Just a huge sideways moment for Dan Martin there. I think it was Dan Martin. No, it wasn't. It was Gregor McFadden, actually, as they came over the curbing on the exit of the chicane. He was well sideways, but managed to keep it going. Front wheel drive car control again is if it starts to oversteer, you just floor the throttle and hope that the front wheels will pull it back round again. And in a car like this, is difficult to do because there's so little power.
I was going to say, let the power drag you out. Oh wait, yeah. Murray Scott then up to the timing beam. He comes then with just coming up to 5 laps to go. Aidan Wilson trying everything he can to try and close the gap down, but Murray Scott last time by had opened up the gap another 1/10 of a second. Murray Scott a 1:13.661 lap time by, 1:14.4 for Wilson, so the gap is now up to 2.9. So Murray Scott pulling away at the front of the field.
Yeah, Dan Martin will only score 12 points down in 5th position against the 25 that Murray Scott's going to score, so Murray Scott will extend his championship lead by 13 points, but it still won't be enough to clinch the championship in this race, but it'll get them almost there.
It'll put him in a much more comfortable position. I think if you were to say to him, yeah, it's going to be, now problem for the 70, no, for is that Dan Martin? No, it's Mark Nisbet. Mark Nisbet's had an issue, sorry, it took me a minute. He's had a bit of a moment coming out of McIntyre.
Well, a bit of a moment going into Clark for the 3rd place man, which is now, I think, James Hitchin in the 27 car. But he's recovered from that one okay, and is James Hitchin indeed in 3rd place behind Aidan Wilson and Murray Scott, who's leading. And then behind him, Dan Martin is now up to 4th position, and taking James McCracken and Gregor McFadden with him. Very
important points there for Dan Martin. That's a great bonus for him to get just a couple more points on the board. Doesn't want to give away any more than he has to, but he's got the really charging number 77 James McCracken behind, and the number 117 of Mark Nisbet, who'll be desperate to try and avenge that mistake on the previous lap.
Yes, Martin Nisbet is no slouch. He could well challenge Dan Martin all the way to the flag here. It's 4 laps to go then, including the lap that they're on. Murray Scott's still out in front by about 3.8 seconds now, ahead of Aidan Wilson, who in turn is about 2.5 seconds ahead of James Hitchin in the 27 car in 3rd position. And he's a long way now ahead of Dan Martin. 2.5 seconds almost ahead of Dan Martin. But Dan Martin breaking clear of the 2-car battle behind him, so that gives him a little bit of breathing space, and he can focus on moving ahead instead of defending. But still, he's going to lose a few more points to the championship leader Murray Scott as things stand at the moment.
So it'll be 3 laps to go when Murray Scott comes up to the timing beam. He's just hitting the brakes now for the hairpin, avoiding that little bit of standing water on the inside. It's not on the racing line, but it is if you're going for an overtaking manoeuvre, of course. You can run through the standing water there. But Murray Scott over the line then, 3 laps to go. Aidan Wilson in 2nd. Then it's a real big... Then in 3rd we've got James Hitchin, but it's the battle over 4th is the one to watch. It's Dan Martin holding on to it for now, with Mark Nisbet in behind, and the number 77 Martini machine of James McCracken.
Yep, that's a very tight battle indeed, and it must be making Dan Martin a bit nervous, because the slightest mistake and he's going to get 2 people past him and he's going to drop even more points. So He's just got to keep focused there and try and withstand the pressure. But the pressure is mounting because he's about to be challenged into McIntyre's. He defends that well, but he's had to lose a lot of speed to do it, and that makes him very vulnerable in the run down to Butchers. He's still vulnerable as he's turned to Butchers, but I think he's got it now. Yeah, he's managed to maintain his place now, but that was a strong challenge from Martin Nisbet in the 117 car.
Nisbet looking really racy now as they come up the hill towards Clark. Just whoa, huge slide in third for James Hitchin. Oh, he's held on to it at Clark, but that could have been straight off into the gravel there. Held on to it for now. Now, do we have a switch?
We do.
In fourth position.
Dan Martin down a position, and that is the 117, and Nisbet's got ahead of him. Martin Nisbet now, though, side by side with Dan Martin. Dan Martin fighting back, trying to retake that position as they go into the hairpin. He's on a tight line into the hairpin. He's got it turned into the apex ahead of Nisbet, and he's carrying the momentum out the corner. He's managed to block Nisbet at the apex, so he should hang on, but Nisbet's coming back on the right hand side of the road. Meanwhile, we've got the 77 car going around the left hand side of the road. But I think Dan Martin has managed to keep them at bay, and it's a question now of Nisbet versus the 77 car of James McCracken to see who's going to end up on Dan Martin's tail as they head into Duffus.
2 laps to go then. Here we go, in the Scottish C1 Cup is down the hill to Leslie's and then into McIntyre's. Martin hanging on for now, could afford to take the racing line there, didn't have to go too defensive with Nisbet in behind him. McCracken's there too, and also Ross Dunn's come to join the party too, as they've all been battling over one another. He's right in there as well.
Yeah, this is it's one of the closest races in terms of that midfield battle, but it's also one of the most dominant races in terms of the lead position. I don't think I've ever seen a Citroen C1 race won by over 4 seconds before. Murray Scott's doing just that though, ahead of Aidan Wilson. He's 4.3 seconds ahead at the end of the last lap. We're about to enter, or the previous lap I should say, because we're about to enter the last lap of the race, and the top 3 fairly spread out at the moment, but it's anybody's race for 4th. We've got 4th, 5th, 6th and 7th bumper to bumper coming through the hairpin. Dan Martin at the head of that train at the moment, ahead of James McCracken, Martin Nisbet. But here comes James McCracken to try and get alongside. It's Nisbet trying to get alongside Dan Martin. He's going to do it. He's got the inside of the little kink on the main straight. That puts him in the inside of turn 1 at Duffus as well. And he's going to take that place from Dan Martin, which is what Dan Martin definitely does not need. He's going to try and brave it out round the outside. Dan Martin retakes the position round the outside. He's got the inside of Leslie's, and he's back there, but he's going to have to defend into McIntyre's, and he forces Nisbet over the hot dog curb on the inside, and that allows McCracken to come alongside as they go into Butchers. It's a tight squeeze through there, and Nisbet just survives that attack through the chicane, and in fact comes out of the chicane faster than Dan Martin.
So up they go then towards Clark for the final time. Murray Scott, he's away home and dry. One more corner to go for him, but can Dan Martin hang on to this? Ross Dunn's gone round the outside of James McCracken, so he's really put a late race charge in, so he's gone through into 6th place.
Yeah, this is fascinating how this is going to turn out. 1 corner to go in the last lap of the race. Meanwhile, Murray Scott, the championship leader, is going to take a maximum score here as Dan Martin has to defend at the hairpin, but Murray Scott wins it. Aidan Wilson's going to come home in 2nd position.
Here comes Nisbet. Here comes Nisbet. It's a drag race to the line for the last, but for 4th position, and Nisbet's going to get it, and if he can just pure this last gear change. But here comes Martin. Oh, there's just the bumpers width between them, but it's just Martin Nisbet who gets it over Dan Martin by 0.061 of a second.
Yeah, that's close. That's very, very close. And well done to Martin Nisbet. That was a great run at the hairpin at the end of the race. And Dan Martin had no choice. He had to defend into the hairpin, which made him slow at the apex, and that's what did the damage. He just didn't quite have the grunt to get to the line and take the 4th place, so he drops down to 5th. Murray Scott then wins the race, number 51 from Aidan Wilson, number 24, and James Hitchin, an excellent 3rd in the 27 car. Well, you think, how far does a Citroen C1 go in 0.061 of a second? Not very far. That much.
For those listening in black and white, 3 inches?
Well, 4 maybe.
Four maybe, yeah, not very far.
Yeah, that's fantastic race. So, yes, I had everything that race. It was the championship tension simmering away there, plus all the battling for position in the midfield. It was great to watch.